Hello and welcome to Your Creative Midlife, the Nantucket edition. I'm Betsy Bush. Summer can offer us a chance to pause and reflect. If you're in midlife, an empty nester, or facing retirement, doing summer things like a walk on the beach may offer a time to reflect, contemplate the future, and imagine life changes. If you're on Nantucket, you might consider consulting Suzanne Keating. She's an astrologer with a longstanding practice here. With interest in astrology growing, it's a great time to talk to her. Suzanne, thanks so much for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Betsy.
Let's start with what you do in your practice.
Sure. When I see clients, I ask them for their natal information, which is their birth time, place, and the date of birth, of course. And most people know their sun signs. I'm a Capricorn or, a Leo or whatever. But people don't always know their time of birth. So they have to sometimes go back to the baby book, the birth chart, the birth certificate, if it's there. And sometimes it's not on there. And so they have to go back to their town clerk's office, or ask their mom. And there's usually a family story around dad went to the grocery store and mom went into labor, so they can pinpoint the time of day. So I get the birth information and then I cast a natal chart. And primarily as an astrologer, what I do is the personal charts. And I progress it ahead to where the person is now, what age, and then I do the transits. I also do what I call star child readings, and just for the parents and the grandparents. I don't have to meet with anyone. I do it on my own, and I record it, and I send them the recording with the baby's chart. I practice tarot as well, which is sort of an offshoot of astrology. And but basically, those are the main things that I do.
What are people looking for when they come to you asking for you to do a natal chart? I mean, these are very confusing times. Things seem to be changing very rapidly. What do you think people are looking for from you?
Mostly validation, that they're on the right path, that even in the confusing times, that their life can have some purpose and meaning, and really what they want to know is if they're headed in the right direction or how to deal with some of that. And that's what astrology is really good at, is pinpointing, what's true for you might be different for someone else. So it's very helpful. Mostly they're coming and asking questions about job, relationships, or money. Sometimes health, children, all of those things are encompassed. So when I do the work of studying their charts, I spend about 45 minutes to an hour before I meet with the person looking at all of those things. And I'll talk about whatever jumps out at me, even if they didn't ask about that.
Mm-hmm. What is it that you see in a chart that you can tell people?
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question. Everything. I can see more than they sometimes realize. They'll go, wait, how did you know about my mother? And I'll be like, well, I'm just telling you that this looks like this is the kind of relationship you had with your mother. And they go, yeah, 100%. And they go, but how do you know that? And I said, because astrology works. So it's all the years of studying astrology, studying symbolism. Carl Jung was really good at that. He studied symbolism. If you go to his garden in Switzerland, on the patio, he's got a horoscope laid out on the ground. And he understood that, people have many different facets and there's different ways of knowing. So he worked with symbolism a lot.
I was very interested to read about Carl Jung because I did a little bit of superficial research, but Carl Jung pops up right away. He's one of the fathers of psychiatry. As we know, Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud were kind of, I think, on opposite ends. I'm not an expert in any of that, but I was really surprised at how strongly Jung felt about people's natal charts and how where and when they were born determined a lot of their personality.
It did. I actually use a quote of his on my the mast of my on my headline, I guess you'd say, on my website. that astrology is like, and I'm going to misquote it now because I'm not looking at it, but something about the time in which we're born, like wine. And astrology doesn't lay claim to any more than that,
So do you think astrology can predict a person's future, or does it just determine where you are now and maybe self-knowledge is the key?
There's an element of prediction in astrology, but I don't like to predict too much because you have free will. We all have free will. And so I can tell you, looking at your chart, that the next 6 months might not be best to start that new business. Wait until Saturn goes direct and gets out of your, 12th house and moves into the first house. And then that's a good time. But I don't know that you're going to take that advice. You have free will.
Mm-hmm. Tell me how you learned astrology and where did you get your knowledge?
So I started studying a book by Isabel Hickey called Astrology, A Cosmic Science. And it was in my early 30s, and I was looking for some answers to why I had made the choices and partnership that I had made up until that point. And I read a book by her called It Is All Right. And it didn't have anything to do with astrology, but it was it became my mantra. It is all right. And then my sister said, well, she's an astrologer. And I said, oh, I didn't know that. So my sister knew I had an interest in astrology. So I got her book. And that was it. I just ate, drank, and slept astrology. And, 40 years later, I'm still studying it.
Did you go someplace did you go to another place to study or an institute or?
No, I studied on my own at home, but then I started going off island to the NCGR workshops in Boston. NCGR stands for National Council for Geocosmic Research. So I would go up to Boston and hear speakers, and there'd be 50 to 60 people there from all over the area, New England, and then I just kept doing that for a number of years. And I started to go to conferences. And I'm going to go to one in September of 2026. It's called UAC, the United Astrological Conference. Also, besides being a member of NCGR, I'm a member of the International Society for Astrological Research. I got my certification through them, 3 years ago. And sat for a grueling 6-hour exam. It's a lot of technical questions, and then there's a lot of questions around interpretation, which I scored the highest on. I'm not so good on multiple choice. But so, yes, I go to conferences. I listen to people. I read constantly. I never took a in-depth course at any of the astrological schools.
So do you have clients that come back to you year after year, or is it more a revolving sort of thing, or and are people coming off island to see you, or do you have people on island?
People, so yes, and they come at all different phases. But I do have some clients who come every year. Mostly those are the on-island people, although actually I do have some off-island people that will book their readings. I'd see people on Zoom or in person. Mm-hmm. And I've met a lot of people here from the summertime, and they show up. Somebody gave them my name, and they call me, and so they have a reading. Or doing tarot readings at the farmer's market. They'll take my card, and then they'll call me when they're home in California. And so people like to have updates, depending on their own needs. Sometimes it's not every year, it's every 2 or 3 years. Or somebody will call and say, you did a reading for me 7 years ago. I was going through a hard time. I didn't know if I was going to get through, but the astrology, showed that I was going to be all right, and you encouraged me, and I'm doing really well now. And I just wanted to thank you for saving my life. And I'm like, I didn't save your life. You took the advice and you did what you needed to do. And then they wanted a reading, an update, because it had been so many years.
Wow, that's quite a story. what are the things that people come to you about? And I'm wondering if you've seen it change over the years.
Sure. Right now, we're in some really difficult times, worldwide. And that has a lot to do with the planetary patterns and things that are going on.
Yeah, what's going on? You were telling me a little bit on our phone conversation.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to say, first of all, astrology has a saying, as above, so below, as within, so without. And it isn't just astrological, it's an ancient wisdom, teaching, and tradition. So the outer planets have more to do with the interpersonal. The inner planets, the personal planets, the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars, those change every month or every 2 months. So that's specific to a person. And then Jupiter and Saturn are what we call those are the interpersonal planets. They're where we interact with each other or groups or others. And then the outer planets are the transpersonal, beyond the personal. Those planets take a long time. It all depends on their cycle around the sun. So Pluto, for instance, takes 240 years to go through every sign of the zodiac. Neptune takes 168 years, roughly, and Uranus takes 84 years. So as those planets go through a different sign, and they'll be in a sign anywhere from 7, 8, 10 years to 13, and sometimes up to 20 years, as an overarching umbrella, a feeling. And we just came out of Pluto being in Capricorn last year. It had been in Capricorn for 10 years. What was happening? Pluto's the energy of power, of decay, death, and rebirth. And it was in the sign of big business and finance. So any astrologer could have told you, we're going to have a lot of breakdowns, in big business, finance, et cetera. Now Pluto's in Aquarius, the air sign, a fixed air sign. And it's about connecting and in technology and astrology, metaphysics, things that are ways of knowing and new things and exciting things. So all of these things, the planets equal the energy. Everything is energy, everything, and whether it's numerology or astrology, tarot cards, psychics, how someone treats you, it's all energetic. And the planets have their own energies. And the sign they're in at your birth says how you express that energy. So a Capricorn's going to be business-minded. A Sagittarian's going to be adventure-seeking and wanting to go out in the world and learn more. There's different focuses. And then how they relate to each other is the aspects between the planets. It's all geometry, sacred geometry. And then the sign, the planet in the sign, in the house in your chart, and if you've seen a horoscope chart, it's like a wheel with little wedges of pie. And every one of those little wedge is a different area of your life. The houses are where you work out that energy. So if you've got 6 planets in your 5th house of creativity, children, you're probably doing something very creative and, need to express yourself. And, it's all different depending on where and when you were born.
How old is astrology? Because I'm wondering how before there were telescopes, how did people know how long Pluto would be or Neptune would be?
Okay. First of all, before the Galileo invented the telescope, they didn't know there was Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, okay?
True. Yes.
So they had the 7 main planets, and they counted the sun and the moon. The sun is a star, and it's the head of our solar system, and everything revolves around it. So technically, it's a star, not a planet. The moon is a satellite of the Earth, but we call them the lights. And then the Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn make up the 7 planets that the ancients watched in the sky. They watched the Venus, for instance, every 7 years gets to a point where she's gone through all the zodiac signs and gets to this point and then goes in another direction and makes a 5-pointed star, the pentacle, and so, pentagram. And so that they watched these things in the sky. They recorded these things. The ancient Babylonians, so the second millennium BC, we can trace astrology back that far. Mm-hmm. There's also some indication that in the third millennium BC, they were using astrology. But it was more for predicting the rain cycles, when to plant, when to go to war, those kind of things, So it's been in existence for a very long time. Mm-hmm. I know astrologers whose works I have studied, who I've met, who I've taken workshops with. One of them is probably the most preeminent authority still alive, Robert Hand, and he used to be on Cape Cod, and he would joke at conferences that, oh, Suzanne's my neighbor. She only lives 30 miles away. And people would say, what? And he'd say, yeah, she lives on an island. I live on the Cape. And he's also a Sagittarius, so we got along great. We could joke together. But anyway, Rob is a brilliant man, and he translated from the Greek and Roman texts the early astrology and brought a lot of things to light that people, weren't aware of. We knew that astrology was being used, in the 14th century or whatever, but we just didn't have all the information. So it goes way back.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to me that so many people are like amazed that, oh, Stonehenge lines up with the planets or the moon and the sun. And it's like they had nothing to look at, nothing else to look at except the sky at night, which must have been amazing to them, right? There was no...
They made note of all those things. So those like Stonehenge and the North American Stonehenge is up in North Salem, New Hampshire. I don't know if you've ever been there. It's fascinating. They're aligned with the solstices, the summer and the winter solstices. And those things are, noted. They're recorded. So there's a lot of knowledge that came pre-Galileo discovering the outer planets, and we call them the transpersonal planets.
Do you see a connection to what's happening in the astrological field with, I think, of the disruption, the chaos, the disorientation that a lot of us are feeling right now? Is
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's and for people to understand how it affects them personally, they have to look at their chart and see what planets do they have in the area that are being contacted by the outer planets. What can I do, or not do? It's all based on where you're coming from. Yeah. And maybe you have the ability to keep calmer waters around you than what's going on in the world.
Right. I think a lot of us feel helpless to help institute changes that will kind of bring things back into the alignment that we're looking for in our larger, political life. I would say
it's opening up more because the planet Uranus, which is connects us to spirit and which is sudden changes, it finally left Taurus where it was in fixed Earth, and we've seen a lot, and we're going to have a little more because it's going to go back it's going to retrograde back. But it's about a lot of earthquakes and volcanic things, and that's happening. And but Uranus is moving into Gemini, the sign of communication, connecting, interacting. People are going to start sharing brilliant ideas, especially the young people, of how to connect and how to bring back a sense of individuality and to honor the differences between people and find a way to work together.
Do you think the kind of technology that we're seeing coming out right now, and I'm thinking about AI, how it seems to be out of its, they're saying that it might even be beyond human intelligence. What does astrology have anything to say to us when we have that kind of technological, mechanical-based intelligence maybe making determinations about our own lives?
Well, first of all, it's not outside of human control because we're the ones that put the information out there. It can only pull from what we've put on the internet, okay? So it scared me at first, and I kept getting. I have a newsletter that I put out that I've been writing for almost 20 years, and AI started popping up through Constant Contact on the website. Would you like AI to write your column? I'm like, oh no, I was really insulted. Why am I doing this? How is AI going to talk about personal things? I put a lot of work into what I write, and so. One day, for grins and chuckles, I put in speak to, I forget which one it was, Uranus moving into Gemini or Neptune moving into Aries, something like that. It did a real good, very fast job of pulling all this information from all over the web, particularly from astrology sites, and it spoke to it really well. But it didn't speak to it the way I write personally. Mm-hmm. So can it be a tool that's useful? Yes, it can. And I've used it a few times lately for things that I didn't have a lot of time to look up. I needed some information on something real fast, and it brings it up. I'm not an authority on AI. I don't know. I don't like giving my power away.
Yeah, no. I think a lot of us right now are struggling with this. To where are the boundaries that we want to set for AI doing our work for us? Mm-hmm. Do I really want AI to write my, when I do a podcast, I have show notes, I have blogs and things like that. And I've heard advice saying, let AI, write that blog, but that's not me. That's not my voice. Yeah. And one of the things I'm encouraging in this podcast, Your Creative Midlife, is encouraging people to create, allow it to come from your own mind, your own imagination. Mm-hmm. Connect your hands to your brain, whether it's painting or writing or photography or something, but how important it is that we maintain control of our own brains and imagination.
Well, it's very interesting because you're saying two things in astrology. I would split up the brain and the imagination. Okay, the imagination is under Neptune's rule, and the brain is under Mercury and Uranus. But let me speak to the midlife thing, because when I moved back to Nantucket, and I don't know if 65 still considered midlife, but I consider it midlife, I took up oil painting. I wanted to paint my whole life. I smelled oil paints when I was 12, and I fell in love with burnt sienna. Well, I've painted a lot of paintings since then. With
I didn't know that.
Well, I've taken a break. But with the mind, Uranus is energy that comes like a bolt of lightning out of the blue, and all of a sudden you get that aha. And a lot of inventors, a lot of people, Edison, he had a very strong Uranus in his chart. Different people have this ability to, if they write it down and remember it. I get aha moments, and I don't write them down. I can't remember it 2 days later or 2 hours later. But the imagination is important, because I don't think that we can create something if we can't imagine it. And so the imagination opens the doorway. It unlocks the door to going in. Now, where am I going to go? I'm not sure. And, and so standing in front of a blank canvas or a blank piece of paper, sometimes you have to use a little imaginative prompt to get there. I'm also a past life regression therapist, and I studied with Dr. Brian Weiss, who wrote Many Lives, Many Masters Through Time into Healing back in the 90s. And one of the things Brian would always say is the imagination is the key that unlocks the door to going back. Mm-hmm. And it's true. I do it spontaneously, and I didn't know that everybody didn't do that, but that's how I ended up studying with Brian. But the good thing is that we may not have control over our emotions or our thoughts that pop up, but we have control over what we do about it and how we act.
And does astrology help people gain control over their thoughts and their actions, would you say?
I can give advice about how to do that if someone asks. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've been at the farmer's market with your table reading tarot cards for people. You're very busy there. I think I was there for a little bit, and I saw people, you had a constant stream of folks wanting your tarot cards read. Explain to me what happens with a tarot card reading.
So tarot cards there's 76 cards in the deck, and they're ancient symbols, and they connect to astrology. And all the astrology signs are either fire, earth, air, and water, and the tarot cards relate to that. Fire is wands, air is swords, earth is discs or pentacles, and water are cups. And so when you study all of this ancient symbolism, it's called ancient wisdom knowledge. And they're just, the cards individually can show you different things. So I have somebody who wants to sit down and ask a question, or I don't care if they tell me the question. As a matter of fact, I almost prefer that they don't. But to have it on their mind as they shuffle the cards, I give them the choice. Do you want me to use this deck or that deck? They say, oh, you pick. I go, I can't. It's not my reading. You pick. What one speaks to you? Look at the artwork, you know. And people are so focused on me thinking I'm going to tell them some miraculous thing. But really, it's the symbolism of the cards, and I know what they mean. So so I say it's important for you to shuffle the cards. I'm not going to touch the cards. You're going to shuffle. And then you're going to cut the deck into 3 piles. And then I'm going to ask you, which pile do you want me to pick your cards from? So they've done all the choosing. What deck? They've shuffled. They cut the deck. What pile do I pick your cards from? Then I take the cards and lay them out. And I do at the farmer's market, I do a Celtic cross spread, which is a 10-card spread. And then I just start telling people, and they're like, wait, were you in the back of the car on the way into town? I was telling my girlfriend, and all these cards came. I said, people get what they need. There is an element of magic in the tarot. I didn't want to believe that, but there is. I'm a very skeptical person, believe it or not. And so when I do it over and over and over, and people tell me, wow, this is right on, they get what they need. I have nothing to do with it, except that I do make a prayer every morning that I don't want to come back and do karma with these people. So please, Holy Spirit, help me to be a clear channel of light and love. So that people get what they need, and tarot works that way. It just does, and I don't know how to explain it, but
Do you know the questions that people have on their minds? Do they ever share that with you?
Oh, sometimes they'll share it and say, well, I wanted to know about love, but I only got two cups, which is about emotions and love. And I'll tell them, but this here in the middle, this upheaval that you just had in your life, this major event, this kind of is what's driving you right now. And, and so the question of love, the love card came up towards the end. That's coming up for you, but right now you have to deal with all of this going on. And that's your higher self telling you, pay attention to this. So, people hear it or they don't. And, it's their choice what they're going to do.
Wow. You mentioned you say a prayer every morning. Are you a person of faith?
Oh, yeah.
Do you go to church? What?
I don't go to church that often. I go once in a while. I went the Sunday before last. I have a very strong connection. I was raised Catholic, and I have a very strong connection with Divine Mother. That's all I'm going to say on that right now. I believe strongly that we have that there are ascended masters and people that can help us, and that we are spiritual beings. We're just on the earth to learn and to grow. And I believe that we do it over in many lifetimes. And I do work with, Jesus, Mary, and the Holy Spirit. That's all I need, but I'm not a religious person. And so when people say, I'm not religious in the sense of strict Catholic, I used to fear the Catholic Church because of, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't have a stray thought, but I don't fear it anymore. I just accept that, my belief is mine. You're going to have your belief. I try not to put anything I believe on other people.
I think when people hear tarot, astrology, past life regression, that they immediately think of the word pagan.
Mm.
Can you address that? Clearly, you're not pagan, is what I'm getting from you.
Yeah, I'm not a pagan. I think there is a whole following of pagans, like doing witchcraft and stuff, and mostly they are herbalists. They work with the earth. They're not like satanic, that kind of thing. But I do think that part of making pagans out to be wrong or in some way bad has a lot to do with how religions really grew and started to take over more of society as cities grew, and especially throughout Europe and everything. So I think that a lot of people were put down and actually persecuted for their beliefs, and which really had more to do with nature. Mm-hmm. They were more nature driven than anything else. And so I'm not an expert on paganism or anything. I've never practiced it. I don't know enough about it. But my own upbringing, yeah, I was raised pretty strict Catholic, but does that mean that I can't practice astrology? No, because I've learned that it's all just symbolism, and the more people know, they can help themselves. And I think that's another little place where organizations like, churches and big business and stuff, they want to have power over people. And the more informed people are, the more they make their own choices. And so that's where I, want to bend the boundaries so people can make their own choices.
That's such an interesting angle to take, or a viewpoint that I don't think popular culture has a different, has a different view, where it's all one thing and it's witchcraft, it's evil. There's something dark about it. I don't want to say evil, but there's something dark about it. But I'm glad to hear that you have a different approach to it and have given me an idea that there's a different meaning to it. It's not, you're not tempting the devil with, pulling the tarot cards and things like that.
No, and the devil card is in the tarot. And when it comes up, people go, oh no, the devil. And I say, this card represents your instant gratification, your desire nature. What are you willing to sell your soul for? It's your choice. So if this card comes up only when you're considering making the wrong choice, or if you're chained to someone who has power over you. And they always know what it is. They always know who the person is in their life that's got them chained, or what their addiction nature is, or whatever. It's not about the devil. Yeah.
That's amazing. That is really amazing.
Just like the death card, it isn't about 99% of the time. It has nothing to do with physical death. It's about transformation. And that card shows leaving behind the past, the old, the outworn, and moving into war, and moving into peace, and moving into growth and the sun shining and blessings.
So part of your life falls away and you become something new, where you have the opportunity to.
If the death card comes up, it means you're ready. You're ready to transform.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We know Nantucket is a special place. And I know we're going into a field that you've told me is not your specialty. But there are unusual things that happen on Nantucket. There are reports of hauntings. People have interactions with beings that are not living. What do you think is going on?
Energy never dies. Everything is energy, and energy never dies. It just takes another form. So, yeah, are there ghosts? Yes, there are. Have I seen any? Yes, I have, both on Nantucket and in Vermont. It's not anything to be afraid of. It's just an energy that got stuck on the earth, perhaps, because their husband never came back from sea, and they're waiting in the house for him to come back from whaling or whatever. That's just an energy. It's nothing to be feared, there's a lot of old houses on Nantucket, and when you think about it, in New England, all the settlers that were here, and people have lived in these houses over and over for, on Nantucket for over 200 years, and so and more, I think. But so there's a lot of energy. And I was talking to a woman the other day who's staying in a house, and she said, I think the house is haunted. And I said, what house? And she told me, I said, oh, yeah.
That's well known, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was in a house when I was a kid. We used to get flooded out, because I'm born and raised here, and we get flooded out down in Brant Point and have to go inland, and the duck would come and get us and take us to relatives and friends and drop us off. And I was in a house that was haunted by the previous owner. And we used to tease, my friend and I would tease her sister. And so that ghost came and appeared to me to say, yeah, you're going to leave notes for her. I'm going to show, we'd leave notes that I'm watching you.
Wow.
Well, he was watching me.
Nantucket's been occupied by people for thousands of years, right? The Wampanoag have been here were here 6,000 years ago, and you find arrowheads, people find arrowheads in some of these, fields and things like that. Do we think that there is something left over from the Wampanoag that we need to be aware of?
Are the Native American
Yes.
spirits here? Oh, absolutely. I built a house on property that used to be very close to one of their settlements, and we would see this one Native American wandering around. We honored him, and before I built the house, I did a ceremony thanking the spirits for letting me live there. And they were completely harmless.
Do you think more of that needs to happen, like honoring the people who had lived here for so long before a new house is built or whatever?
Absolutely.
But what is that?
Well, doing ceremony, the Native Americans lived in touch with nature. We're pretty far away from that now. And the more people take care of the land and honor the intention, things are here. It's intentional, and just saying a prayer over your property before you do something, or, not building where graves are. And that happened here with Myacomet Village years ago. And so that whole little park off the side of the bike path where the water fountain is, going from Myacomet Road up towards South Shore Road. That was Native American land. The Myacomet, they had settled back in there, and that's where I actually built a house in the 80s, back near the edge of that. Yeah.
Any tips for people coming to Nantucket who want to explore this side of Nantucket? I mean, there is a ghost tour, which is very popular. I don't know how accurate or it is, but any ideas for my listeners?
For exploring the spirits here?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's not my forte. Like I said, I have never taken the ghost tour or anything like that. I have read Lou Balliot's books about haunted houses on Nantucket. I think Nantucket has so much to offer architecturally, historically, the whaling, everything. It seems like there's so many things here, and I would start at the Whaling Museum or the NHA. There's a lot of people just have to listen to what inspires them and what they want to do. But as far as ghosts and stuff, I don't know what to say about that.
Well, Nantucket has so much to offer historically, and nature is wonderful here, and it's just so beautiful. And I am always constantly reminded when we have a gorgeous day like we've had the past couple of days, where it's like no other place on earth for many, many reasons.
Really?
And you're here also, Suzanne. So I'm very thankful for that, and for giving us this really interesting view into astrology, which a lot of us have not had before. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share that.
Suzanne, how can people get in touch with you?
They can go to my website, www.pathwaysofthesoulack.com. They can email me at SuzanneKeating3@gmail.com or call me at 508-221-1283.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe, follow, and give us a 5-star review, please. Go to our website, yourcreativemidlife.com, for all our episodes and learn more about me and my guests. I'm Betsy Bush. Thanks for listening.